Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in this morning's newspapers. Joining us are Miguel Delaney, Chief Football Writer at The Independent, and John Cross, Chief Football Writer for The Mirror. Welcome along to you both. Let's quickly run through those back pages. On The Guardian, let them eat fruit. Ratcliffe ditches Old Trafford staff canteen and targets jobs. And it's the Late Show as Leeds United fire clear in the Championship promotion race, and Stokes skips the 100 to prioritise the Ashes tour. The Times focus on increased security for Emma Raducanu, and once more focus on United's free lunches being axed to save £1 million. In the Sun, thanks a bunch, Jim. Bananas, United Supremo split with 200 job staff's free lunch replaced by fruit. And White in touch. That's to do with Ben White speaking to Thomas Tuchel ahead of a potential England recall. And in the Telegraph, catch us if you can. Comeback win sends Leeds 5 points clear. And of course, that Manchester United story again. Ratcliffe axes free staff lunch as United job cuts soar to 450, and more on Ben White's talks with the England head coach Thomas Tuchel. Welcome along, gentlemen. Let's start with The Guardian and this Manchester United story. Let them eat fruit. Ratcliffe ditches Old Trafford staff canteen and targets jobs. Oh dear. Miguel, let's start with you. Another day and news of more cuts at Manchester United. Should we be surprised at this?
Not at this point, although we should be angry about it. I think the first thing to acknowledge is that it's real people's lives who are affected here on everyday wages. It was something that almost feels a little bit kind of offset by some of the absurdity of the detail. And it is great detail by Jamie Jackson in the piece about kind of, the fruit and what's become of it. But like there is a genuine kind of tragicomic element to it. And I mean, every time there's a development of this at United and this story, I mean, look, I'm not a financial controller. I don't have to thankfully don't have to make these economic decisions. But equally, it could be said that Ineos and Ratcliffe have never run a successful football club. And I just can't see how making these decisions contributes to the winning culture they want, the culture of togetherness they want, as well as the sense of a proper football club, when A, the savings pale next to the amount of money going out on players that they will have to spend. So it does feel like a false economy. And B, the way kind of the drip, and it's not really a drip, there's a flood of stories now like this now, just contribute to the erosion of what is, I mean, it's supposed to be still a community club. That's always been, as much as trophies and glory, what United has been famous for, and at least given the kind of the spirit and culture of the youth products from the area and all of this. And it's a grim story, this, and it's a grim that one of England's great football clubs is in this situation.
Yeah, John, just picking up on what Miguel said there. Look, it feels like small drops in the ocean, these cuts. Is it going to have a bigger picture, and is it going to have a bigger impact, and as big an impact as Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos would want?
Yeah, massively negative, Dharmesh. Jamie Jackson's detail here in the Guardian story, reflected there on the back page of The Sun as well, is absolutely, mind-boggling, frankly. And it's a brilliant story by Jamie Jackson. Take my hat off to him, because the devil is in the detail here. To read then that the only staff really now getting free lunches are the players. I mean, the sort of kind of the harsh breakdown there is that's 3 weeks wages for Casemiro if you're going to kind of, tot up the 1 million sort of kind of cost saved across the year. It brings it into stark context. They are going to be offered fruit. They are going to be offered soup and some bread. But apart from that, they're doing away with the free lunches. This was communicated, to staff, read there in The Guardian, ahead of a meeting with Omar Barada, the sort of head honcho now running day-to-day things at Manchester United, and it's brutal. And let's not forget here, this is about 3 days afterwards, after the sort of stories on the back pages saying the United threatening sort of kind of taking action against staff who perhaps leak stories. And so, to get another round today when there's been sort of a massive staff meeting to tell them about more potential redundancies or a transformation plan was the word used, I think, in the meeting, which I have to say I always take issue with. If you're going to make cuts, why not be upfront about it and be sort of kind of, the people being cut would far rather be told in more obvious English and brutal terms than have it tried to dress up as something else, really, which I find very distasteful. But we are, as Miguel, rightly points out, we are talking about Manchester United here. We are talking about one of the great football clubs of the world. And, day after day, we're reading about cuts. We're reading about staff being axed. We're reading about ridiculous sort of kind of, little bits nipped here and there to save United on the pitch, and I just don't think it's right. The image that they're portraying is absolutely shocking. It does take me back, I have to say, when all the stories, the nicey stories about how amazing Jim Ratcliffe was going to be when he took over Manchester United. Honestly, we had weeks and weeks of it saying what a visionary he was and fantastic businessman. Well, I'm sorry, he might be a good businessman, but at the moment, he's just making cut after cut after cut. And it is wrong. I read a brilliant opinion piece by Jim White in the Daily Telegraph as well. He really takes them to task on it, which is a really strong opinionated by someone who's absolutely passionate about the club and the history and the tradition. And at the moment, Ineos are ruining all of that.
Yeah, Miguel, John alludes to that piece from Jim White, and he's labelled it the Jim Reaper with regard to Sir Jim Ratcliffe. It's 450 cuts now, or approximately 450 cuts. It doesn't show any sign of stopping either. They are coming under increased criticism, are Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos. Is it totally justified and is it totally fair, given the context of Manchester United since the Glazers took over the club?
Well, really, that should provoke a bigger discussion that I think that Jim touched on in his piece. As we talk about all these cuts and United needing to save money, well, let's remember the reason here. Let's remember what the club used to be not that long ago. At this time, exactly 20 years ago, they're one of the most profitable clubs. They were entirely self-sustainable. And what happened? Well, the structures of English football at the time allowed the most cynical capitalist enterprise, which is a leveraged buyout, to basically completely change the club's future and its identity to some degree, with almost no resistance to that. And that's one of the reasons we're here, of course. When it came to the Glazers essentially needing, because one of the reasons that the stake was sold in the first place was because, Old Trafford needed redevelopment, but that involved investment. And when it came to that choice, well, what were the two choices? On one side, another uber capitalist in Ratcliffe, or else a state in Qatar through Sheikh Jassim. And given what we've ended up at here, these are these sort of consequences and what this is doing to a great club, a great institution. These should be provoking as much questions about the direction of English football as actually the Super League back in April 2021, given the real lives it's affecting. And especially as we have all these discussions right now about the regulator coming in, its effectiveness. But this story articulates a lot of what's going on as much as anything.
John, just one more on this. The statement earlier said that future bonuses for Manchester United staff would actually be dependent on on-pitch performance. Is that a clever move, in a way, on the Manchester United side?
Well, it certainly puts the pressure on the players to deliver something that they haven't been delivering on for quite some time. Look, I can see a logic in that. If the staff, that we're talking about getting the bonuses are directly, playing into their bit, if you like, about helping the United players achieve those goals and that success that they will then be rewarded for. But I do think that's kind of, you're on a bit of a slippery slope there, really. Look, I do think it's fair enough that the basic United have referred to it a couple of times, haven't they? Basically, we're trying to make the cuts off the pitch, if you like, to ensure that we can afford to be successful on the pitch. And I do get that. I do, I think clubs the Premier League at the moment is in a difficult situation with the kind of the financial rules and the spending, the dreaded PSR at the moment. And it does seem imbalanced, because these guys are not, Ineos, I think we're seeing a slipstream of stories here, making cuts in other parts of their sponsorship portfolio, if you like, in other parts of the sport. But it's not as if they're kind of, the billionaires there are going to be hard up, but they do have to watch their money and what they can spend off the pitch to ensure that they can carry on spending it on it. So we shouldn't lose sight of that. And I do think, some of that spending and some of those guidelines are wrong, basically, because it's disjointed. Clubs want to put more in, then they should be able to do so. But I do still feel, do take it back to, United have made so many mistakes for so long in terms of recruitment, in terms of managers, in terms of, getting it right. They desperately need to get back there. I mean, having said all that, they've actually won a couple of trophies in the last 3 years, but, they desperately need to kind of get back. And having won those trophies, it's still not made them, be successful, if you like, off the pitch and sort of kind of competitive as a business.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll be talking about Manchester United and their cuts in future editions of Back Pages tonight. Let's change tack and talk about England and Thomas Tuchel, Miguel. The Telegraph reports that Thomas Tuchel holds talks with Ben White before naming his first England squad. Where do you stand on this? If Ben White is given an avenue back into the England squad, what kind of message is that sending?
Well, I suppose it means that maybe it's a clean slate for everyone, as it probably should be with a new manager coming in. I mean, I suppose the suggestion was initially that some of Ben White's issues were specific to, if not necessarily Southgate, the managerial regime there. He has rejected overtures since. And I suppose, A, the fact that a meeting has been happening shows he's open to it. And B, that Tuchel is, again, willing to look at anyone. I have to say, I mean, I know some people think because White has maybe been perceived to reject a call-up since or left the World Cup, that maybe because of what a national team represents, he shouldn't be called back. I wouldn't see it like that. I think sometimes, different circumstances lead to different decisions. And if he's open again, and look, it can only help Tuchel's team, especially given how Arsenal have missed Ben White.
Yeah, John, just picking up on that, clean slate, says Miguel Delaney. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I do think Ben White's got a dilemma, hasn't he? I mean, Thomas Tuchel first sort of broached this, when at the draw in Zurich in December, I was there and he sort of said, look, everyone's got a clean slate. Yeah, I'm going to reach out to Ben White. He's obviously done that. Listen, he's spoken to loads of players in the last few weeks. He really has. The stories elsewhere about him talking to sort of James Maddison. I think sort of subsequently, I think he's spoken to Joe Bowen at West Ham. Loads right across the board. He just wants to know where players stand, where they're at. I think it's more established stars, but as well as sort of kind of young ones coming through. And look, I think it's sensible to make that call. But where does this leave Ben White? I mean, Ben White clearly didn't want to play for England before. Will he feel a pressure then to turn up for England? It obviously relates to him leaving sort of the camp in sort of kind of Qatar in 2022. Does he really want to play? I don't think we should hold it too much against him. If he doesn't really want to play, then don't really. He probably feels he can't do, right for doing wrong. If he plays, then he'll probably get booed. If he doesn't, then, at least he avoids the stick, frankly. If I were him, I'd probably give it a miss. It's a shame, really. He's such a good player.
Miguel, John, great stuff. Don't go anywhere because we'll take a quick break there. And when we come back, we'll look at more of the sports stories in the morning's papers, including this inside the mirror. Dead ball focus has killed off Arsenal's title dream. You're watching Back Pages tonight, and welcome back to Miguel Delaney, Chief Football Writer at The Independent, and John Cross, Chief Football Writer for The Mirror. So let's go to your paper, actually, John. And it's all about Virgil van Dijk. Give him hell, he says. We must make Anfield horrible for other teams now. He's urging Liverpool to make Anfield a fortress in their last 7 home games in the Premier League this season. The nerves kicked in a bit, didn't they, against Wolves? but it would take some capitulation now, wouldn't it, for Liverpool not to claim this title?
Well, they're 11 points clear, Darmesh, with 11 games to go. And 7 of those, would you believe, are at Anfield. I mean, how about that for a run-in? You know, I honestly, I think Liverpool have been by far and away the best team this season. They've got by far and away the best player, I think, in the world right now in Mo Salah. Absolutely sensational. I thought they were magnificent at City yesterday. I was at City and I just thought they were absolutely fabulous. You know, put on an absolute masterclass just to show just how good they will be as worthy would-be champions, really. So I do think they're cruising for it. But look, you're right to point to that Wolves game. They did look nervous, particularly in the second half, and you could really sense that the crowd were then basically, a little bit tetchy. Anfield, understandably, I mean, it was in the COVID sort of kind of season when they last won it. So, you didn't get those nerves, but you did get it before. And Anfield is an incredible place. It's a magnificent atmosphere, but it's only natural that fans get a little bit nervous, a little bit unsettled when they can almost, touch things and taste things. And basically it's understandably so. And he's just saying, I love his comments. He's just saying, a real rabble-rousing, cry to the fans. Let's make it absolutely a fortress. And I do think that Liverpool will cruise to it. Here's my little tip, basically. I think Liverpool will win the title by double figures. What a team they've been. What a job Arne Slot has been.
Yeah, and double figures probably from Arsenal, Miguel. Inside the mirror, there's Gary Neville's quotes have been involved in this as well. Dead ball focus has killed off title dream. Bit harsh or fair?
I'm not sure I fully agree. I can see what he's getting at. I'd say it's much more injuries and the questions that have arisen from that have killed him off, not least recruitment. And maybe you could even, given some of the questions that other managers have faced about injuries, you question about approach there. But because I think when Arsenal have their full 11 back, or their best 11 or best 14 or whatever, and they play as they normally do, or as Arteta idealises, I think they're still possibly the best attacking force in the country, or at least up there with Liverpool or City at their best. And it's proper attacking football. I think one of the issues has been when Arteta has lacked one or two of those players, it's almost like he goes too overly pragmatic. And he kind of regresses a bit too much. And like we saw that earlier this season before the injury crisis got really bad, saying like the 1-0 defeat to Newcastle and some of the games around that period. So where I get where Neville is coming from, I think that's almost more Arteta's extreme response to the bigger issue, which is fitness. And hence I think there seems to be a bit of a view within Arsenal that this is a bit of a freak season for them, and they're generally in a good shape. But it still should provoke questions, especially given, I suppose, the talk for a while at Arsenal was if City weren't as good as they were, then Arsenal would have been champions. So for City to drop off and for Liverpool to slip in ahead of them, as we now all expect, and as they're there top, will frustrate them.
Yeah, frustration for Arsenal would be an understatement, wouldn't it, John? Did they just lose their way this season, do you think? And what was pivotal for Arsenal's failure, if it is to be a failure, to not winning this league?
Well, look, first and foremost, I make Gary Neville absolutely bang on. I listened to it actually driving home from City last night as a podcast, and I'm not surprised. It was good, it was a good spot, and basically because it promotes the debate. I do think they've been, every manager wants control, and basically, I think sometimes that control element of football can make it, too predictable, too pragmatic. And I want to see skill and flair in moments. And I think Arsenal have lacked that this season. They've lacked a sort of kind of impetuous sort of kind of brilliance of the last couple of previous years. And I do think that's been sorely lacking. The obvious thing for me is the last two transfer windows. Not doing anything in January was unforgivable. Last summer, an absolute farce of a window, frankly, when they still spent £75 million on yet another left back who spent much of the season injured and was shocking actually on Saturday for allowing the cross to go in. Mikel Merino, who yes, he scored twice at Leicester, but he's been distinctly underwhelming, I'm afraid, so far. And, and then basically taking up two loan places with Sterling, it hasn't really worked. Neto reserve goalkeeper. Talk about disaster. That's where, you've gone wrong, really. The squad looks imbalanced. That's why you're getting injuries, because you're going back to the well for the same old players, basically, who are being pushed too hard, understandably, by Arteta. And I'm sorry, there's been so much gone wrong. Arsenal shot themselves in the foot. They've only got themselves to blame. And frankly, I was at the game on Saturday, and actually I was surprised that the fans, it was almost resigned to their fate, basically. It was a weird sort of atmosphere. It's been underwhelming, completely disappointing season. And I do think Arteta needs to wake up and realise he actually needs to win a trophy, frankly. He's done a brilliant job at Arsenal, fabulous. But honestly, next season, he needs to win major trophies.
Yeah, underwhelming and disappointing for Arsenal, you say, John. But Miguel, quite the opposite. If you're a Leeds United fan just now, the Guardian late show fires Leeds clear in the Championship. Another late show, you'd have to say as well. What does this say about Leeds United, Daniel Farke, the player's character, particularly what happened at the back end of last season as well?
Yeah, I had it on just before we came on air. Obviously, the line on Sky, which Crossy pointed as well, was their Farke time, and that has been a theme of their season. And also, I think it speaks to be fair, like the character that he's imbued in the team, that is very impressive given how last season ended, given some of the questions. I mean, there is maybe a bigger debate to be had about whether there's a few clubs, and Leeds are one of them, that are essentially almost this sort of Premier League 2 in the Championship, where parachute payments and like just the structure have created these teams that rotate into the Premier League. But even within that, it's been a remarkable season. And yeah, they do look a Premier League team with real resilience to them.
Yeah, John, Miguel says they look like a Premier League team. The Mirror also feature Leeds and their late show against Sheffield United as well. Love them or hate them, the Premier League is better with Leeds United in it, isn't it?
100%, Dharmesh. Couldn't agree more. I've got a soft spot for Leeds, and I know that'll wind up a lot of people, but I think they bring something to the Premier League. That's what I want. You go to Ellen Road, marching on together. I'm sorry, but, whatever fan or club of persuasion you're on, you've got to enjoy that song. It's a brilliant song. It's basically everyone's there together. The atmosphere is sensational. It's a really intimidating place. I've loved how they've played football this season under Farke as well. They were so unlucky last year. And I do think these late comebacks speak to me about a resilience and about an inner strength and a determination to go up. I think they've got some really good players. They've clearly got the best squad in the division, but that's not been Leeds, that's not been Leeds' issue in the past few seasons. It's about holding their nerve, getting it done. Yes, they're 5 clear, but more importantly, they're 7 clear of third place Burnley. I do want to see them get up, and I do think at this rate, they're absolutely cruising to it. They look in such good shape at the moment, and they bring something to the party. I really like them, Dharmesh.
Miguel, in 10 seconds, we've seen the clubs that have been promoted from the Championship go straight back down in recent seasons. Do you think Leeds can buck that trend?
Yes, I do. I think they're going up with Sheffield United and Burnley, maybe.
Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen. Miguel, John, you've been fantastic. Now, if you missed any of the show, there's another chance to see Back Pages tonight at hour, and the show is also available as a podcast. Just download Back Pages on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And join us again on Tuesday night when our guest will be Charlotte Dunker from The Times and The Sun's Charlie Wyatt.